Peace and what's good, YouTube? It's Kareem Samdi back again with another video. Alright, so all men should be practicing NOFAP. The reason why I say this is because NOFAP is something that can only benefit you as a man, especially during the times that we live in now. You know, you have to think about just exactly how much strain porn has put on the minds of men and the effects that it's had since it's become, legal and become much more popular, right? What does porn actually do to our interactions when we're taking into account our interactions with women, right? What does porn do to that for the human psyche, right? Because we have to really consider these things. And the more that you interact with something that's a fantasy, the more you begin to create more of a fantasy for yourself. You begin to detach yourself from your higher element. See, through connection with our opposite, we can understand ourselves. And when we understand and we see ourselves through women, we can also understand the higher nature of ourselves too. And as they do for us, vice versa applies here as well. So we really need to take into account just how powerful the sexual energy really is. The sexual energy is not something to be depleted and wasted on things that don't benefit us, right? And I've said in many videos before that the sexual energy, every time you release your seed, you are creating something. Whether or not you are conscious of it or not, whether or not you're releasing your seed into a woman or not, every time you ejaculate, you are creating something. So the more you are focused on porn, right? And the more you keep reinforcing those same thoughts, those same feelings, the more you begin to beget more porn, because your seed can create anything. Your seed can create at least 500 million people with just one single seed. So we have to really consider that every time we release. And if you're not releasing consciously, then you are going to begin to beget more lust. And the more lust that you beget, that's not necessarily benefiting you, the more you're going to become dependent on it. See, a lot of men cannot go to sleep without busting a nut, and that's sad because that shows the dependency. And if you watch my previous video on NoFap and semen retention, you'll see exactly why. A lot of men cannot sleep without busting a nut. A lot of men cannot finish the day without busting a nut. And all those dependencies, what you're doing when you create a dependency on something like that, in which you have to continue to go to something in order to seek fulfillment, right? When you create the dependency, it begins to drain you of your energy, because you as a being, you are a complete divine being. So you shouldn't be relying on anything in the first place. But when you begin to rely on something like that to give you your sexual fulfillment, that's when you begin to invite and create negative entities for yourself. And we have to really balance that out, right? Because if I asked you before in another video in one of my shorts, which would you rather choose? Would you rather choose human interaction and intimacy, or would you rather choose porn for the rest of your life? If you could choose one for every night, I know every man would say he would rather choose intimacy with a human being. So when it comes to porn, what's the point of choosing that when you can make it for yourself? And if you are constantly choosing porn, but you're not actually getting out there and making the connections that you can make with women, right? Then what are you telling yourself on a psychological level, right? Because if you begin to put something down, because you don't actually need to regularly continue to use porn, but once you decide to put it down, what you're telling yourself is that you don't need it for that fulfillment. Because one, you can validate and fulfill yourself from within, and then two, you can find someone. So we have to be conscious of that, right? Because porn addiction is a very serious addiction in 2022. And it's also one of the ones that's hidden and not necessarily taken as seriously. There's a lot of people that believe that NoFap is a meme, right? Because everything is seen as a meme until it's so ingrained in your consciousness that you forget that it's mind control. So we have to really be aware of these things, because porn will limit your spirituality. Anything used in excess will limit your spirituality. See, we have to see these things for what they are, and for what porn is and what it's become is nothing more than just raw sex. And the more that you begin to feed those symbols into your mind, is the more that you begin to create a reality centered around raw sex, because there's a lot of men that they're sexually immature because of how much porn they've used in their lives. And porn is something that's being introduced to men at very, very early ages. I was introduced to porn at an extremely young age. You know, before I was even a teenager, I knew what it was. And we have to really understand just how much of an effect that can have on a child growing up, right? And I've been practicing NoFap and semen retention for at least 2 years, almost 3 years now. And what it's done for my life is transformed me spiritually. You know, like I said in the previous video, and if you knew me back when I was Red Reams, you know, practicing NoFap and semen retention helped jumpstart my spiritual awakening. So I know if it can do that for me, it can probably do wonders for you as well. And if it doesn't, that's perfectly fine. Find something that does work for you. That's what I'm concerned about here, you know. And really, another reason that all men should be on NoFap is simply just because of the fact that you're wasting so much time using porn, right? Because a lot of the times, you don't exactly know what you want going into what you're looking at. And see, that being in control of your time is very key, because you're not controlling a reality if you're spending so much time on things that don't necessarily serve you. See, one of the big reasons why I had to stop using porn, right? It wasn't necessarily because I was addicted, but it was more so I was wondering, what does porn actually give me back? See, we don't really consider some of these things that we do, right? When we have a dependency on certain things, we don't really question exactly what those things are really doing for us. Because if you get back a nice feeling or some excitement for a little bit, it doesn't necessarily last. But those 2 hours that you spend looking at porn, right? What do you get back from that? And that's why posting up clarity is such a big thing for men, because they realize exactly that they've done nothing but lose. See, when you ejaculate without purpose, when you ejaculate without the intention of creating something great for yourself, you do lose energy. You do lose creative energy. You do lose creative spark. You know, that's a fire within you that is meant to create and benefit you. It's meant for your evolution. It's meant to raise up your consciousness. But since porn and sex in general, is so poorly understood, especially in the West. But sexuality in general is so poorly understood. Things like porn, they're so heavily pushed to keep your consciousness locked down, to keep your spiritual power locked down. When these things didn't exist, we had much more powerful men in society, standing against the agendas, right? And I look around now, there's only very few men that I see that are really spiritually empowered, at this point in time. Very few. And a lot of men are conscious and moving up that consciousness ladder, but I'm talking about spiritually empowered, godlike individuals, holding it down, and actively creating things that are combating the matrix, destroying the matrix. See, you can't do any of that when you're so focused on porn, when you're losing all your time and your energy to porn. Porn gives you nothing back as a man. It's like dealing with a toxic ex. It gives you absolutely nothing in return. Porn is nothing more than a fantasy that is sucking your energy every time you use it. And if you're driven in any kind of way, you have to understand that you don't really have time to waste. I've said this many times. You have no time to waste. So if you're wasting your time busting gallons, liters of nut, to your screen, I mean, you have to really, question yourself, because there's so much you can do with those time, with all that time, with all those hours. There's so much you can do, and it's not taken seriously by most men, because most men don't take themselves seriously, right? And they don't take themselves seriously because they don't even know how to. They're scared of their own evolution. They're scared of their own power. And another reason is just ignorance and mind control used against them, because, sex is nothing more than a crutch. And it's seen as a pinnacle of success and fulfillment in this world. At least the mind control version of it has been placed like that. And as men on the spiritual path, men on the spiritual path should not be manipulated by such things. Women on the spiritual path shouldn't be manipulated by such things. See, when you're in control of your sexual energy, you are moving mountains. You know, you are actively destroying the matrix, and you are actively controlling your reality. And you can't do that when you're wasting your time. You see, there's so much better stuff that you can do with the hours, and even if it's only 15-20 minutes, there's still much better things you can do, because you could have meditated in those 15 and 20 minutes and worked on your chakras, right? There's never really an excuse to try to fit it into your life. Spiritually, it doesn't even benefit you, you know. So we have to be cognizant of that as men, and women should be cognizant of that too, because porn addiction is not limited to men. And at the end of the day, we're still all one body. So, you know, this is something that's affecting us on both scales, because the porn addiction that's affecting men is also affecting the women's ability to connect with men. And then women begin to have more issues with men in general, because the masculine energy isn't there to balance out the feminine energy. See, you know, we have to work together in these types of things. And you can only do that if you actually open yourself up to receiving your opposite. But to receive your opposite, you have to understand yourself first. You have to let go of what's holding you back first. See, that dream woman that you have, you can have that woman, you know, but let's be honest. When you think of the greatest version of yourself, do you see that person watching porn? When you think of the greatest woman for that greatest version of yourself, do you see her being hooked on porn the same way that you are? And we're talking about idealistically. So you can actually put as much imagination to this as you want. I really want you to close your eyes right now and just envision the greatest version of yourself. Do you see that person watching porn? Because I know when I think of the greatest version of myself, I don't see him watching porn. You know, and when I made that realization years ago, I had to let it go. And the thing is, you are gonna relapse on this path. Like, it happens. You know what I mean? It occurs. And the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up for it. But it's just the act of trying, right? Because trying becomes doing. And when you start to do, that's when you begin to transform. And I urge you to educate yourself on exactly what porn does do to the human brain, especially if you're a man who's ignorant, you know, on what it actually does, you know, or a woman who's also ignorant on what porn does to the human body, what it does to the brain. You know, that's something to research, because there's an urge to get you addicted to that for a reason. It's to keep you locked down into your lower nature, right? When we concern ourselves and we raise our sexual energy to our higher nature, we begin to transform, we gain more power. But if we're stuck on our lower nature, right, consuming more porn, consuming more food, consuming more negativity, more bad news, all these agendas that are pushed on you on a daily basis, that's what you're going to begin to become, you know. And if that mind control exists there, then you're not thinking for yourself. You're not controlling your mind. You're not controlling your reality. And you can only be conscious of these things when you begin to actually question them and research them. And if you haven't gotten the book yet, get it now. You know, order it now, because this is the book. You know, Taoist Secrets of Love, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy by Montauk Chia. This is the book for men looking into NoFap and semen retention, but on a spiritual level, right? Because that's what we deal with on this channel. We deal with spirituality. We deal with the occult. You know, you definitely need to get this book. As if you're a man, you need to have that book. And women can use the book too, because it talks about raising the sexual energy, the masculine energy up from the ovaries as well, and using it for sexual transmutation. And that's another thing. You know, you can't sexually transmute when you're constantly spilling your seed, you know, watching porn all the time. The only thing that you're transmuting that energy to is wastefulness, honestly. So understand the sexual energy. You can understand the sexual energy reading Montauk Chia's book. I guarantee you that. And when my book comes out dealing with the male sexual energy, then I'll really break it down, but in my form, right? And that's coming very soon. You know, that, and another thing that I want to say on NoFap to end on a good note is that this is essentially, you know, if you're really looking to become greater, then you have to really just take into account, okay, if I really were to envision the most ideal version of myself, with the most ideal things that make up me, who would that person be? What would they be doing? And see yourself like that, and then begin to act like that person, because that person is not going to be so hooked onto porn, right? See, we can't bog down our consciousness to things outside of us, because we have to really recognize that we have it all within. You know, you have the sexual mastery and the sexual energy all within, the sexual fulfillment all within, you know, and it's more, sex is more than just ejaculation. It's, you know, it's more than just an orgasm, you know, it is connecting with, first it's connecting with people, connecting with intimately, making a spiritual connection through intimacy. And then on a spiritual level, you are connecting with different parts of the universe, different parts of the Godhead, but you can't do that focusing on porn so much, you know. And a lot of these illnesses, a lot of these disorders that men have, you know, approach anxiety, right, is a huge one. Another one is confidence issues. You know, you can let go of all of that by letting go of porn too. But you also have to recognize where those things are rooted in too, because you can't just say, I'm going to go on NoFap and then I'll be a Super Saiyan, I'll be a God. Like, no, there's more about yourself that you actually have to do work on. And that's what I made my chakra series for anyway. So you can recognize the different parts about yourself. And another thing is that you shouldn't be doing NoFap just for women anyway. You shouldn't be doing NoFap just for gains anyway. Those are things that you should already be comfortable with before you go into NoFap. You know what I mean? You should already be comfortable with talking to women. You should already be comfortable and confident in your own skin, because if you lose that NoFap, because essentially what you're doing is you're letting go of porn and you're taking NoFap and using it as something to replace it, right? So you can also get addicted to NoFap and then begin to turn it into something that it's not necessarily meant for. And see, that's another thing, because if you go into NoFap with an agenda, and your agenda is to just get more women, your agenda is to just have gains and all these other physical benefits that a lot of people talk about. If your agenda, if your focus is on that, then all you're doing is feeding your ego at the end of the day. You're not sexually transmuting anything, you know. And that's the same thing goes for semen retention too, because semen retention, a lot of people they take semen retention, they leave it all at the root chakra. They don't even use it. They don't raise it. They don't raise their consciousness doing it, you know. And that's another thing, because back when I was Red Reams and I was going hard on that, and I could still go hard in it now, but I think the point is clear. You know, you want to do this for you and for your transformation. Your transformation is really all that matters on the spiritual journey. Everything else falls by the wayside because it's all humanity, it's all ego, it's all earth, you know. But when it comes to your transformation, you have to really be in tune with your purpose, with your higher purpose, your higher self. Your higher self doesn't need anything, and it damn sure doesn't need porn. So that's the video. I wish you all luck in your journey and peace.